serious.
One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two, one, two, one, two, one, two.
So, welcome back to another episode of Quarantine with Gean. I'm Gean Techman. I got my homie Aaron. Aaron's on today. What's up, brother? I haven't seen you in a while, man. How you been, bro?
Hanging in there, man. One day at a time. You know how it is.
Yeah. So what you about, man? Where you living now? What's going on with you?
I'm in the Phoenix area. I've been out here for I came out here in 07, end of 07.
Okay, nice, man. What you doing out there as far as operations go, man? What are you into?
I do basically like masonry, hardscape, block walls, things like that. Synthetic grass. I'm the superintendent of one of the biggest companies here in the valley.
Okay, that's what's up, man. That's what's up, man. Good to
So
hear.
I got owner responsibility, but not owner money.
Man, I know how that goes, man. I've managed companies for years. I know how that fucking can be.
Right.
I'm starting up this little podcast, man. I'm quarantining, as you can see. I got a botched beard here, man.
I got that 5 o'clock popping too.
Yeah. I figured quarantine hair don't care. I just kind of went along with it, man. I decided just to run with it, but just something I'm messing around with. No better time than to do it now. You know what I mean?
Barbershops ain't open. You know?
Right. I'm used to cutting my. Right.
I had a cut in like 3-4 weeks.
Right. I'm used to getting my hair cut every week, man. I'm going on 4 now, so I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to figure this out here pretty soon.
I'm gonna just take it down to a 1 all the way through.
Bro, I think I'm gonna be stuck doing the same thing, So it is what it is, But yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on today, man, to answer a few questions. We have the coronavirus pandemic upon us. The stay-at-home order is in place on pretty much every state in the United States. There's a handful and an exception that have not. People have different emotions, different views, different perspectives about it, and I wanted to call some people in that I know, ask a few questions, get a little feedback on how you feel about it, what's going on in that department. You know what I mean? So, I went on a rampage this morning, man. I tell you, I was just like, you know what? I just feel like doing something, getting something together. And, I reached out. Obviously, you were quick to respond back. Who would like to do an interview? I'm thankful that you're here to answer a few questions. Getting into that, this terminology is all new to us. Social distancing is a new term. Coronavirus is a new term. COVID-19, all these other things, like this is all new. And now we have this stay-at-home order in place. We have to stay at home and social distance ourselves. Where were you at, man, when you first started hearing this terminology? What was going on when it started banging in your head when you actually started to tune in, and clearly we all had to respond to it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I heard about it. It really wasn't that big of a thing here in Arizona. So I guess at first it wasn't. Like a lot of the other states had, way more serious, like multiple states that already, issued the stay-at-home order and all that stuff, like weeks prior to Arizona doing it. And, since I couldn't relate, I guess, personally at the time, I was more so of the type that was just like, everybody's blowing this shit out of proportion, everybody's just tripping to the point of like, what's the point? Like, the way I kind of viewed it when I first heard about it was like, I guess the way I heard it was the reason I viewed it this way, but I was basically like, okay, it's essentially the common cold or flu virus, just on steroids almost, for lack of a better term.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I was just dismissing it, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
And but I mean, they had the first cases in Arizona that were, I guess, confirmed. There was like 5 or 6 at ASU. And ASU was the first school in Arizona to like discontinue classes because of it. And then from there, it just, just like everywhere else, it started just progressively getting worse to the point of, they started issuing the social distancing. And then the next thing was, the stay-at-home order,
right.
So on and so forth.
Yeah. And I was at work when it hit me. I was actually working, and you know, I said this on a past episode that it was when the NBA decided to cancel everything that I knew it was time to take it serious at some point of perspective. You know, somebody was taking it serious, regardless to the beliefs. I was like, whoa, you know, and that's when I really started tuning in. I heard coronavirus, and I thought the same thing like yourself. This is probably just a flu bug. This is something. It's whatever. No big deal.
Right.
You know.
I mean, I'm still not convinced that it's, you know, I mean, I'm not dismissing it by any means,
Sure.
but I feel like it's being like overhyped.
Right.
That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I ain't or nothing like that. That's just how I view it.
Right. And that's okay. You're allowed to have that perspective, man. And, you know, I feel the same thoughts with you, similar thoughts, should I say, that, you know, there's a lot of hype behind this beast. You know, the news turned it into something I think that was bigger than what it should have been. And at a certain Yep. And at a certain point, I think there's an obligation for, you know, the people to respond for safety, of course, but then obviously, you know, governors had to step in and obviously be part of that as well. But that to me doesn't equal that there's actually a problem. That just means to me that we had to respond to it. And I think what's going on right now is a lot of people are scared, of course. We don't know what's going on. This has never happened before, you know. I said, you know.
They basically, and you know, you and I kind of touched on this, you know, in a prior conversation.
Yeah.
Or I think it was a post that you had that I quite honestly, again, I'm not dismissing anything. You know, I respect anyone who has lost a loved one because of, you know, this situation. But, you know, I really feel like that this is, at this point now, being, you know, treated as like, can we control the masses by fear? Instilling fear, you know, because they come on here and, you know, I stopped watching the news. You know, I'll read certain articles, but I will not watch the news anymore. I don't watch the daily, you know, Trump releases and shit. I don't pay attention to none of that, bro. But, you know, I hear them touch on so many numbers, okay, confirmed cases or increased amounts, whatever the case, just numbers that, I mean, to me, they could just pull these numbers out of their ass, you know, just to try to make it seem like it's worse than it actually is. Right. Again, these are all my personal opinions, you know.
Yeah, and absolutely, man, and you're allowed. And I keep saying it, you're allowed because we don't know what this is. You know, we've never done this before. You know, even the social distancing to soften the curve, in theory, absolutely. You know, I can look at that on paper and say, sure, that absolutely makes sense. But we've never done this before. So until you run it a handful of times, there's really no way to find out. And as you're saying, you know, how else do you find out? Eventually, you know, you got to make it happen. There's a spark that, you know, ignites a fire. And it is scary to think that, you know, so fast this entire planet is in some form of policing each other and pointing the finger at each other. You know, if you're out of line, then I'm checking you because you need to do what everybody else is doing. Otherwise, you know, you're the one that's messed up.
Again, like you just said, policing without like physically confining us, the people, like worldwide. The government is controlling us 100% across the board right now. Stay home because we say so.
Right.
Yes, there's a virus. Yes, there's a reason that we're saying this, but, you know, we'll just tell you whenever we're tired of, you know, keeping you guys locked up in your house, basically.
Right.
That's where I'm at with it.
And that's you know, and it has to always be a something to consider that every structure is corruptible. You know, every structure is corruptible. Every building has a weak point to it. And you know, that's where I bring a conversation of awareness to the table of let's just consider. And I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist to myself. You know, I'm not trying to just spark an argument just because. I'm not trying to just pick something out of the woodworks. I'm trying to put logical thought together about things that make sense to me, you know. So let's figure this out. You know, why is this a element that we haven't discussed yet? This should be right on the table, you know.
And you know what? And same thing. I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means. I'm what I would consider myself to be a realist. Okay, so when I hear something, you know, no matter where I hear it from, whether it's social media, whether it's the news, I'm not going to take it at face value. You know, I'm not going over here say I'm going to do my own type of research and educate myself.
Right.
You know, I'm not just going to take nobody's word for nothing, especially when it's, you know, literally controlling my life at this point.
Right. Right.
Like, show me why you say these things. Show me the proof as to why you're telling us we have to do this and can't do that. You know, just so on and so forth.
Right. Right. So how are you handling the stay-at-home order right now, man? What are some things that you're doing to stay busy, occupied, entertain yourself, educate yourself? You know, what do you have going on?
I'm still working, so you know.
Okay, you're one of the essential workers that are still fucking grinding right now. Okay,
right,
that's what's up.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm naturally an introvert, so you know, if I'm not working prior to all this, you know, if I wasn't working, I was usually home anyway.
Right.
You know, I don't go out. I don't go to no damn bar. I'm too old for that bullshit. Right. You know, I just sit at home and just kick back and chill. So I mean, realistically, I mean, granted, it is a difference because I don't have the options to go and do things. So, I mean, all I've done is, you know, clean my house. I spring clean my house and, you know, things like that. And I just started picking up old hobbies again. I started doing origami and
man.
I get down with them like 1,500, 2,000 piece puzzles and, you know, stuff like that. You know, keep my mind occupied. There's only so much TV a person can watch.
Yeah. That's what's up, man. That's good to hear. I've been trying to keep my mind occupied as well in that same department. I'm trying to learn Spanish right now. I'm using the app Duolingo and just trying to stay consistent, man, and learning another language and something outside of just English, you know?
Right. And I mean, I picked up on that. I can understand Spanish for the most part, probably a solid 90% of it. I can speak some of it. It's broke as hell.
Yeah.
But you know, I just picked it up over the years because a majority of my employees are all Hispanic.
Yeah.
You know, their first language. So, you know, I just, again, picked it up over the years.
Yeah.
It's just a little tricky because I got Mexicans and I got Guatemalans and they have different dialects.
Yeah. Yep.
So, you know, that's why I say my Spanish is probably busted as hell.
Yeah, man.
Someone who Spanish is their first language.
That's super duper slang.
Yeah.
So what are some of your concerns right now, though? You know, we kind of touched base a little bit, but what are some of your concerns about the stay-at-home order and the coronavirus outbreak that are the highlights that concern you the most?
Well, I mean, honestly, there's a few things, but the biggest concerns, I guess, are, you know, it's even though they've quarantined us, social distance us, you know, stay at home ordered us.
Yeah.
Like I haven't seen, you know, anything get better. So I mean, to me, I'm more so on the mindset of okay, well, clearly, you know, everything that they've done because, like you said, we have never dealt with this before.
Right.
So, and whatever they're doing, I mean, they say it's working, but again, like, are we just going to take them at their word?
Right.
So, I mean, honestly, like, real shit, G, this is the way I think of it. Like, at some point in time, you know, if this is going to still continue, I feel like it's going to be basically everyone's going to have to get it, you know, at some point.
Right.
And then, you know, I'm not a scientist or biologist, but I feel like if you've gotten it and, you know, there's obviously this survival rate is extremely high.
Right.
So, you know, get it, get through it, move on with your life, man.
Yeah.
Get back to business as usual.
Yeah. Yeah, and I share a similar thought with you there, man. At the end of the day, you can't outrun a virus. You know, it's good at a certain point. A virus always has to run its course. There really is no medicine for a virus. You know,
Right.
There's things you could try to do to trick a virus. There's things you could try to do to trick the body. But at the end of the day, a virus is still going to run its course and do what it's supposed to do.
Absolutely.
I think in my philosophy, I think that's the best thing that we could do. It's a theory of natural herd immunity, and that's just my personal opinion myself. And you know, I mean, I hate to be so crude because I don't want people to die either. But I mean, at the end of the day, with all living species, it's survival of the fittest. You know what I mean? So
now, to a person like me, that's not crude because I agree with you pretty much 100% across the board. again, I'm not a biologist, scientist, but I'm kind of, the way I view it, similar to you, is I'm looking at it like this. And I mean, I'm not doing like apples to apples here, but think about like the chicken pox, right?
Right.
If everybody gets them, or if you don't, and then you get them later in life, you have the chance of dying from chicken pox.
Right.
But once you get them, you can never get them a second time.
Right.
How do we know this shit is any different from chicken pox?
Right. Exactly. Yep. And to call this measure is scary, because this is our world economy is changing wrapped around it. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like the negative side of doing this is apparent, that our economy's in a slump, and the question mark ends up being like, how long does this last, and what are the effects going to be of it?
Nah, that was going to be my next concern I was going to touch on, because this, similar to the recession, okay?
Right.
It in the big picture did not affect the rich, the wealthy, the CEOs, like, at all. They lost money that they, recouped tenfold.
Right.
But who it really affects, and even right now, is very similar, because of this, people aren't able to work, their 401ks are just depleting, their retirements, everything's just going away, and people are losing, things that they've spent their whole lives building, like their homes, vehicles, because they cannot continue to, provide and pay for those things. Again, this is the middle class, lower class, that are ultimately affected, because these rich people, or people just with money in general, like money,
right,
they're not losing anything that they've built. Like, they're not losing assets, they're losing cash.
Right.
Again, will be recouped.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
How do you recoup someone that took them 30 years, 40 years, till they're, 35, 40 years old to buy their first house? Took them that long to make that happen, and then now, boom, it's gone. How the hell are they ever supposed to get that back? We ain't got another 35 years to do that. It's crazy, man.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. You're right, man. And it's hard to see a positive light in a lot of this stuff, man. It's actually dark and gloomy, from sickness to economic bash. But on the bright side of things, what are some positive things you've maybe been able to see out of this stay-at-home order and of the COVID outbreak, and anything that comes along with it?
I mean, I guess it's hard to speak on like people as far as positivities, but one thing that is very obvious, it's been a positive turn for the earth itself.
Right.
Just much less pollution, look at all the stories that you've heard, and even the pictures that they showed of lakes, aerial shots of like lakes, rivers, things of that nature,
right,
that were just polluted beyond people being able to, enjoy them, because there were so many people there. They just kind of destroyed the environment. But now everything's coming back around. It's just like the human body, like a smoker. You stop smoking, your lungs will start to heal themselves.
Bro.
So it's like we're the smoke, and the earth is the lungs.
Bro, that's a great analogy, man. Perfect metaphor. I agree with you 100%, bro. Absolutely.
That's the biggest positive that I see, that this whole COVID-19 coronavirus has, made a change on in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we could all agree that we definitely have wreaked havoc on planet Earth as a species. And as you said, leave it alone for a minute, and stop the obstruction, and that we can heal ourselves. And I think that's a great metaphor to use, all the way across the planet Earth. As far as this stay-at-home order goes, and because of the effect of this pandemic right now, man, how long do you think this is going to last? How do you think we're going to come out of this now? What do you think's next?
Well, it's hard to be like to predict something like that, because even our government, who has issued all of these orders, they've continuously pushed the date further and further out. But I guess if I had to just pick a date, I would say this is probably going to push through till the middle of May, possibly the end of May in like worse states like New York. and things like that, where it's just like triple to 4 times more than other states that obviously everyone has this issue, but there's some states that are far worse than others. But I mean, it's either going to be that, or honestly, I feel like people in general, if they're forced to stay in continuing to live their lives this way, people are going to start not being so agreeable to these things.
Right.
People are going to start, I don't want to say rebelling, but like people are going to start getting pissed and be like, fuck this. Like, no, I'm not going to waste my whole life sitting in my house.
Yeah.
Like people are just, we're not, especially with all the things that have been invented over the last 15 years as far as technology, and then obviously all the social medias, all it takes is for one thing to happen, meaning these police trying to police us,
right.
the sense of like, okay, well, we're just going to pull you over because we can, and force you to go home if you're not essential, type of thing. And the shit's going to, I'm sorry to say it, but it's just human nature, and it's the way of our life, the way of our world is, authority figures, they abuse power. So it's going to happen. There's going to be a case where cops going to take it too far with somebody over some bullshit, and motherfuckers are just going to start wilding out.
Yep. And then, I heard a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. the other day that riots are the voice of the unheard. And, it's kind of eerie because it's true. You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, you say enough and somebody's not listening to you. The next thing,
what? This is the biggest thing. I wasn't going to say riot because,
totally. It's a trigger word, and I'm not even condoning violence in any way, but it's like, the next thing is the rebellion. You know what I mean?
That way, it's going to be the worst, rioting situation in history, because this is not directed at a race. This is directed at a species. Like this is directed at all human beings. So we're all going to unite and then just rise up. You know what I mean?
Right. And all I could hope on a positive note is that, the people of authority do have the right information in place, and this isn't going to be detrimental and destructive long run.
Yeah,
as of right now, that's my fear. That's my biggest concern, that we acted out of fear before we had all the information about something we know nothing about. I understand it was to be preventative, but I just don't see this being a global pandemic to shut the entire world down. But that could be my ignorance. But as I stand as a man right now, it seems like it's been over dramatized, and hopefully this all goes away. But I don't think it's going to get back to normal anytime soon. I think we're living in a new dimension at this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like things are going to be different from this point.
Absolutely. I mean, even something as minimal as like, I've heard that beyond this, once we get past this, like handshakes themselves be a thing of the past, which is strange to me because I mean, I'm a businessman, I meet customers, I make business deals, and what's the first thing you do when you meet a potential client?
Bro.
Shake your. What's the last thing you do when you end the meeting? Shake their hand.
Bro.
You do that.
And that's yep. And that's culture of any deal. You know what I mean? That's a culture of any deal. Like, your word is your bond with a handshake. And it's crazy to think about.
I mean, think
how
about
do we...
it. There's a reason they say, we had an agreement, we shook on it.
Yep.
Yep.
It's always been that serious. But you know what? I guess once upon a time it used to be the thing to spit in the palm of your hand and shake on a deal too. So I guess we've worked our way into a germaphobe society. Everything's DocuSign now. We got to DocuSign our deals.
I think stop the spitting because I mean, we just got hip to hygiene.
Right. Some basic keeping clean principles.
Like, unless you're my chick, like. There should be no reason we swap bodily fluids. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Well, hey man, I appreciate your time, bro. Do you have any social media, any businesses you want to shout out before we wrap this up? Any topics you want to cover before we close out?
No, sir. I just wanted to again help you out, have this conversation. You know, obviously you're doing your thing with this channel.
Yeah.
Just, you know, get my opinion out there. You know, I'm sure a lot of people disagree with what I say, and I'm sure a lot of people agree with what I say. But you know, that's the thing about us as a people. We all have our own opinions. We all have our right to them opinions. And some of the things I believe in or that I've said may be accurate. Some may be very inaccurate. You know,
Right.
time to tell.
Right. Absolutely, man. And all opinions are welcome. It's why I wanted to do this this Quarantine with Gean podcast. You know, every perspective is a perspective that should be considered, man. So I appreciate your time, bro. So this was the Quarantine with Gean with my homie Aaron